Hello, thank you for joining me here on Catalyst Chronicles. Glad you're with me today. This is a video series where I tell stories from the mission field. Today's going to be a little bit different in that I'm going to tell you when I started drinking coffee. Sound like a mission story? Well, it actually is. Some of you might be surprised that drinking coffee was not a normal thing in my life until later in my adult years. So today I enjoy it very much. I was going to entitle this Why I Drink Coffee, and then I realized, well, the why is that I find that it tastes really good. But the story I want to tell you really isn't about the why, it's about the when. And that's where the mission piece comes in. I have an artifact here with me today, and believe it or not, this is a coffee maker. Some of you have maybe seen a coffee maker like this, so maybe you're not surprised. Some of you may be like, well, how in the world is that a coffee maker? Well, I picked this up in Costa Rica, and that's where our mission story is going today, is Costa Rica. And this is a coffee maker. As you can see, there's a cloth. We used to call it a sock. I think that's a fair description. The joke used to always be that you put a dirty sock in here, it makes better coffee. I've never tried that. Doubt it's true, but it's a really kind of a cool piece. I'm going to describe it to you here because you can see it, but you maybe can't see a lot of the details. But you've got a cloth sock here, piece of cotton or whatever it might be, and then there's a wire, and you can tell that this wire, of course, has been formed. You can see in the circle, and it's just been twisted, and very much this has probably just been done with a pair of pliers, and honestly, this isn't so much different in that it's a fairly rough cut piece of wood. It's a really lightweight wood. I wonder, I don't know what kind of wood it is, but it's real lightweight. My guess is it's not very porous though, but I don't know that for sure. And then there's another wire. It's heavier than the wire that's in the sock here, but this wire is formed up here, and it's really quite fascinating because they've attached it down in here with a couple of nails and bent them over, and they created the shape they wanted, including the circle for the sock to go in, and then a piece of wire. And I just share all that with you because it's really, it's very much a handmade piece. It's something that I picked up in Costa Rica, out in a bit more of a remote area where they were no doubt catering to tourists, I'm sure, on a roadside stand. But in the end, a very very cool piece with a fond memory for me of Costa Rica. We've spent in our mission journeys, we've done a lot of work in Costa Rica over the years. I couldn't even tell you. I'd have to look it up, but I've been to Costa Rica many, many times, and they they definitely they meaning the people that we work with there. The Wisdom family was one of the missionary families that I'm going to highlight today. This episode is in memory of my dear friend Clint Wisdom. He was truly a dear friend. I miss him deeply. Just the other day had one of those moments, where when you have a dear friend that leaves this earth and you have so many fond memories, there's those moments even years later that hit you, and you just, you remember those moments with them and how precious and valuable they were to you. So Clint had moved his family to Costa Rica, and they were the first ones. Actually, that's not true. I was going to say they were the first ones to host mission teams from In Motion in Costa Rica, but we actually had someone else host a couple of teams many years before. But Clint is the highlight for us. We've had some other great hosts, so if you're watching this, you're valuable and precious too. But Clint hosted a lot of teams for In Motion Ministries over the years, and he became one of my very, very dear friends and confidants. And having him pass from this earth was definitely a loss that many of us felt. And my heart still goes out to the precious Wisdom family, and the kids, and Rachel. Specifically, I'm going to talk about today, as I talk about why I drink coffee, or when I started to drink coffee. But to Renee and the kids, God bless you. You're dear, precious people, and don't get to see them as much anymore because we're not traveling like we used to, and so forth. But just many fond memories from this family. But before I start to cry, let's go back to the story at hand. When did I start drinking coffee? So let me take you back a few years. It was actually early July. I don't remember what year exactly, but I know it was early July, and we had gathered for a July 4th celebration here in the United States. And my wife and I were in a four-wheeler accident that day. And I was injured less than Sandra was, but I was injured nonetheless. I had sprained an ankle pretty severely. And the crazy thing is I was scheduled like just a few days after that to leave on a mission trip to Costa Rica. And, so it was a last minute thing if we were going to make changes, and those are difficult to make, to find another leader, to arrange tickets and so forth. So with my doctor's approval, and the proper support gear on my foot, on my ankle, and the proper medications in hand, I embarked on this journey a few days later for Costa Rica. Now, luckily, my daughter Mackenzie was along on that trip as well, so she was she was good at keeping me on task, because as a leader and an injured ankle, it was a bit difficult to lead because I know what I want to be doing, but the limits as to what I should be doing and what I want to be doing are two different things. I also had some great assistants, leaders on that trip as well. So it was really a matter of me needing to humble myself and say, okay, listen, here are my limits as to what I can do. And so then I trust you all to take on the rest. And it was probably really good because those assistant leaders were very much ready to do that. And so there was no reason for me not to let them go ahead and take on responsibility that was difficult for me to do with an injured ankle. And my daughter was very good at saying, Dad, have you taken your medications today? Are you doing too much? Are you up on it too much, etc.? So I don't tend to pay attention to those kinds of limits very well in my life. And so it's good to have people to help me. So here I am, in Costa Rica. Now, a lot of people, when you think Costa Rica, most people might think jungles, you might think beaches, you might think hot, humid, and you're not wrong to think those things. There's a lot of Costa Rica that is very much those things: hot, humid, jungle, and beautiful beaches. But there's also what they call the Central Valley, which is the center of the country, as you can imagine. Makes sense, right? Central Valley. That Central Valley is where San Jose and the biggest population. The percentage is significant as far as the number of people in Costa Rica that live in the Central Valley. It's a good percentage of the population. And in that Central Valley, you're actually at about 3,000 feet above sea level, which, is kind of remarkable because if you look on a map, Costa Rica is not that wide. It's a bit longer than it is wide. And so you can get to either coast where there are beaches and so forth. And this Central Valley, yet in the middle, obviously the beaches are at sea level, but the Central Valley, you're at 3,000 feet. It's also a very wet climate. They have dry season and they have wet season. But for a guy from Colorado, in my opinion, they have wet season and wetter season. There's no doubt there's a difference, but even in dry season, it's wet. So you're at 3,000 feet above sea level in this Central Valley, and that's where we were staying at the time. That's where this story is taking place. We did a lot of missions work right in there. Remember, a big piece of the population is in that area. I should do a video and unpack that because it's fascinating how the population of that Central Valley has formed and the different people groups and so forth. Now, I'll do a video on that someday because it's a very interesting thing. But we're working in the Central Valley, and here I am. I'm leading this team, but have great assistant leaders. I have my daughter along as my nurse, and I have a severely injured ankle. So I'm limited a bit in what I can do. So we're organizing, we're planning, we're figuring out how to make this work. Obviously, it's different than what I'm used to because I'm used to just getting in there and doing it, and I couldn't get in there and do it. I needed to let others get in there and do it, and I needed to sit back and relax and take my proper medications and not be up on my ankle a lot. Now up to this point, I already alluded to this. I just was not. I wasn't a coffee drinker for sure. This would be well into my my adult life. I really wasn't a hot drinker at all. I mean, tea wasn't really a thing for me. It just wasn't something I had ever gotten into. I loved the smell of coffee. Oh my goodness. I've always thought the smell of coffee is amazing, right? So here I am. And there were days where the team would go out from we were staying, the missionaries, the Wisdoms have an amazing setup where it's changed a little bit now, but at the time they had three houses. And so mission teams would come in and very often, I mean, there were a few exceptions, but most of the time we would stay there at their house. And, we might be a mission team of 15, 20 people, and yet they had, like I say, they had the main house where they lived, and then they had two smaller guest houses. And it really worked very nicely. It was a great property with a river running on the backside, and just a great place to be. And because we're in the Central Valley, uh, and we're at 3,000 feet, it's more moderate. It's still very wet, but even from a temperature standpoint, and the humidity is not as big a deal because you're up at 3,000 feet and the temperatures were just more moderate. You get great breezes blowing through and so forth. And that's where we were working in that Central Valley. So we would organize our days, and there were days where the team would go out. And when I say they would go out, they would go to some of the poorer areas around where we had done tons of ministry over the years and where the missionary was working on a regular routine basis. And we would do church services, we would do feeding programs, we would do children's ministry, we did all kinds of different things to be a blessing. We did some building projects even in some of these areas over the years. And so the team, was prepared, and they had good, my assistant leaders along, then they would go out for the day to do their various forms of ministry and outreach and so forth. And I would try to go along if it was a project, where maybe they weren't going to be out all day or whatever. But I just, I was under doctor's orders to be off my ankle a fair bit. So, with unusual experience for me, I ended up spending more time there at the missionary's house. And obviously, I wasn't the only one staying back. They had a big family, lots of kids, and so I wouldn't be the only one, there at the house all day. There would be other people around as well, and it really created. They had a beautiful, what I'd call a porch, a big screened in area under roof and everything. That you could sit, and you could remember. I mentioned there was a river that ran by, and you could sit there, and it just was a great place to sit, to read, to meditate, to have conversations with others. It was just a great setting. So I had more time than normal, for me on a mission trip to sit and spend time with people and to reflect and to read and listen to podcasts and all that fun stuff. So while this was happening, um, one of the missionaries' daughters, Rachel, in particular, was just very kind. They're all kind, but she'd been very kind to me on this particular trip, and she would say, "Hey, do you need something to drink or something to eat?" And so I started having her make me and bring to me as I'm sitting there with this bum ankle, um, cups of tea at first. And then she said, "You want to try a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So over the course of that week or 10 days, and me having more time just to hang out and be there, boy, it's a lot of fun. I hope you are enjoying hearing my stories. I'm enjoying telling them, and I'm enjoying reminiscing, because this was, as difficult as it was, because Sandra and I had been through this four-wheeler accident, and of course, leaving her was a bit difficult, but she also, it wasn't a mission trip, it was more of a vacation with a friend, but she also had left and gone on a trip. So I think that helped a little bit, because I knew I wasn't just leaving her at home. Because her injury, she was fine. We were both fine, obviously. I'm still here, right? But Sandra's injury had been more of a concussion, and so more of a head injury kind of thing. So that was a bit more concerning than just an ankle, right? You could do without an ankle if you have to. But it was a bit hard to leave her, but it's fun to reminisce and to think about all that went into this whole scenario, because it actually turned out to be a great memory in that it was unusual, it was different, it was not my normal mission experience. And so here I am staying at the missionary's house. The team goes out and they're doing their thing, and Rachel's bringing me, cup after cup after cup of things to drink. And I fell in love with hot drinks. That is when, and not that I had never had a cup of coffee or tasted it or had cups of tea or hot chocolate or that kind of thing before this, but this was the moment where I fell in love with hot drinks. And I learned how to make tea. Now, granted, I've told you some stories from England and Ireland, and I will tell you more because that's been a fond and fun place for us to be, in great ministry over the years as well. And they make amazing tea. So I'd had some great cups of tea, but it had never won my heart, right? Well, this time in Costa Rica, it won my heart. And I don't remember if I purchased this coffee maker before that experience or after, but I do enjoy seeing this and looking at it because it just reminds me, of those precious moments of interacting with people, the kindness of my daughter, making sure that I was not overdoing it, that I was taking my medications, the kindness of Rachel to bring me cup after cup of tea, and then I learned that actually I do like coffee, and I drank a lot of tea at first, but ventured into where I drink both tea and coffee now. So it's fun to look at this little piece, this artifact, and remember, not that I fell in love with hot drinks, but remember a time in my life where I needed to do it different. Because of my ankle injury, I needed to allow others to take on responsibility that I normally would have, or to not be in the middle of things the same way. And it turned out to be one of those trips where I got to have conversation with some of those wisdom kids in ways that I hadn't before, as much, because things were just slowed down. And it turned out to be a delightful thing. And by the way, any of you wisdom kids that are watching, I love you dearly. My heart breaks for you in losing your dad, and I miss him as a friend. I know you've missed him as a father, but at any rate, thank you, Rachel, if you happen to watch, for introducing me to tea and coffee, and that process is just dear to me. To this day, I drink a cup of tea or coffee, and not every time, but a lot of times I'll remember many great moments in my life, because it was a moment, right? It wasn't just I'm drinking coffee or tea. It was a moment of shift and change for me. So it was a catalyst in me for change. Learning, that was kind of the beginning of me learning the value of slowing down, the value of letting others, take the lead, that I don't always have to be, the man of the hour, that I can slow down. I can let others fill roles, and those are just good lessons for me that I'm still learning to this day. And it just brings a lot of great memory and richness back. So there you go. That's kind of the story, of when I started drinking coffee, and those amazing intimate moments that are included in that. And I'm very thankful. Thank you for my daughter Mackenzie. I know she'll watch this. Thank you for caring for me so well on that trip. And it's just great to look at when life happens. Sometimes it's really great things, sometimes it's challenging things, sometimes it's painful things. I mean, it can be a mix, right? And it's just kind of cool to look back and to see how people step in and how God steps in. My heart was changed on that trip, and my heart was changed in some good ways. I've just mentioned I learned to slow down. I learned the value of that conversation. There were just some really key things that trip helped me with, and I'm thankful for that. And that's what these mission trips have been about over the years. It never really was about the mission trip for me as much as it was the powerful moment of shift and change that it is for individuals that go on these mission trips. It's just a great environment where people can get out of their normal routine. They can get out of their day-to-day. They can get away from the pressures and challenges and just routine. It's not all bad, but just get away from that daily life experience and get into something very different. And often our hearts very much open up. We're very ready to learn and to grow and to see things differently. So not every trip was as powerful as the one I've just described to you for me personally. but this in particular was, and I'm actually very thankful for it. And thankful for those moments that create that opportunity, by which we can learn and grow and experience shifts and changes that are just important and valuable, and just they make a difference in us. They're a catalyst for change. I hope that you have received something from this. I know, as I normally say on these videos, this is something I lived, so it's very easy for me to connect with it. It's not something you live, but I hope that you can find a value point, and that maybe you can find something to apply in your life, a catalyst that can be a point of change for you in your journey and your experience of this life. But thank you so much for watching. I enjoy telling these stories, and really appreciate you watching. So until next time.